nine, eight, seven, six, five, four, three, two, one. Here we go, sir.
Good
The start.
morning and welcome to today's webinar on unseen workers during COVID-19 pandemic and lessons for future. I am Dr. Lakshmikant Palo, CEO of People to People Health Foundation. I would like to thank you all for your participation in this important webinar. Before we get into the webinar, we would like to show our solidarity in the time of COVID. Our collective response will help India to come over these challenges. We need urgent actions to overcome the COVID-19 challenges in India. We are pleased to host this webinar today under the ASTA platform. ASTA is the Asia Africa Supply Chain Transfer Health Alliance platform initiated by PPHF and CASEFIRE to create a multi-sectoral alliance platform of leaders by bringing partners together, fostering collaboration, leveraging technology, and improving end-to-end process and mobilize collective strengths for sustainable health supply chain processes. The objective of today's webinar to learn from the experience of the experts we have today on unseen workers. The focus is truck drivers today. And to facilitate more creative thinking to address challenges faced by unseen workers. And also we'll see a list of priority action agendas and recommendations for the key stakeholders. We all know that truck drivers have played a very important role during the COVID-19 pandemic. They have been playing an essential uh, part in supplying the medicines, other essentials, life-saving vaccines, and other critical household supplies during this COVID. And as we are discussing on webinar today, they are on road, they are servicing, providing services to our nation and all across the nation. So the agenda of today's webinar to present ideas and thoughts on three sub-themes: how we can work on a framework and a leadership agenda action to improve challenges of unseen workers with particular focus on truck drivers based on the country experiences and the knowledge and the evidence that we have, and we'll hear from our experts today, and identify critical drivers that may be beneficial to the key players and stakeholders working towards the important of life of unseen workers. And also we'll see that how we can work collectively and collaboratively, what actions that really contribute towards improving the life of unseen workers. So a recorded version of the webinar will be available who today cannot join, because many of the even the speakers and the participants, they have requested because of this COVID challenge, they cannot join today. But this recorded version will be available to other participants who are not able to join today. There will be a chat box where the live streaming of the webinar is happening on YouTube. I think you can see the link over there. You can also post your questions on the Q&A section to the speakers. So those key questions can be facilitated to the, directed to the respective speaker to respond those questions. And few questions may not be, because of the time constraint, we may not able to answer, but those we can have a follow-up kind of discussion with the speakers. Today we have mixture of esteemed speakers from development agency, industry, foundations to help us better understand their sectoral experience, and the best practices and the challenges related to unseen workers, especially again focusing on the truck drivers. I would like to express my sincere gratitude to our speakers today. Now I am requesting our backend team to show a short video that we have prepared on the life of unseen workers to set the context for this webinar. And I hope that we will get some insight for discussion and in the next steps, on this issue. Thank you. Over to back and team.
कि ड्राइवर की ज़िंदगी यानी कि कोई बंदा ये नहीं सोचता भाई ड्राइवर की नौकरी अच्छी है। सब यही बोलते हैं यानी ड्राइवर कोई नहीं है यानी कि सड़कों पे यानी कि सारा सारा दिन। कभी कभी तो ना भैया हमको यानी कि बड़े ट्रक होते हैं ना, उन पे यानी कि एक एक महीना यानी कि 12-12 दिन गाड़ियों के अंदर ही रहना पड़ता है भैया। उसी के अंदर रहना, उसी में खाना, उसी में सोना, उसी में सब कुछ उसी के अंदर।
13-14 हज़ार रुपये हम लोग का सैलरी होता है। लॉकडाउन में 10,000 कर दिया था। मालिक बोल रहा था करना है तो करो, नहीं तो भाई घर जा सकते हो, उतना काम नहीं है। हम लोग के लिए, ड्राइवर के लिए कोई इज्जत नहीं होता है। लॉकडाउन में ट्रैफिक वाले चालान काट देते थे, जहाँ जहाँ वहाँ रोक के चालान काट देते थे। कुछ हम लोग का सुनवाई नहीं हो रहा था लॉकडाउन में। पहले की तरह अभी भी वही परेशानी है। हम लोग ड्राइवर के लिए हम लोग चाह रहे हैं कि हम लोग को ड्राइवर की इज्जत दे, हम लोग को सैलरी बढ़ाए, लेकिन कुछ नहीं होने वाला है।
The life of a truck driver is one characterized by uncertainty, the absence of security and dignity, yet they are the most vital cog in India's $3 trillion economy.
अगर दुर्घटना गाड़ी से होती है या कोई बात होती है तो गांव हो या देहात हो या शहर हो, लोग आते हैं सब मारो 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 करते हैं, हमें कोई सहायता नहीं मिलती किसी चीज़ की।
ड्राइवर को ट्रैफिक पुलिस वाले जगह जगह परेशान करते हैं, वो एंट्री मांगते हैं ड्राइवर से, मालिक लोग देते नहीं।
हाल तो यूँ ड्राइवर को कुछ मिलता नहीं है, बस यूँ तवाई पिट रहा है बस। अरे बात तो यूँ है।
These observations are confirmed by Save Life Foundation's report that found over 50% of drivers were dissatisfied with their occupation. 90% of drivers lack social security benefits. Only 1 out of 10 drivers have any kind of formal training. A long-haul driver spends 12 hours a day driving, and 48,000 crore in bribes are collected, often from drivers' own pockets. As a consequence, 84% of drivers would never recommend driving as a profession.
Is a lifeline of the country that is taking medicines, food, supplies from one part to the other, but we have completely failed to provide them the kind of dignity and the kind of facilities and basic care that would ensure that this process and this group remains sustainable.
Save Life also found that 53% of drivers earn between 10,000 and 20,000 a month, while 10% over 20,000 and 1% earning over rupees 30,000. These figures highlight the unsustainability of the profession, given that these figures could be easily earned through gig economy employment, which is also less physically demanding.
%25 of trucks were actually standing on the roads for want of drivers. So all the drivers have somehow vanished. And the pain point is the balance 75% of drivers, if you interact with them, try to understand what's happening, you would come to know that they don't even want their own children or their own relatives to get into this profession of driving.
Life's report also found the physical toll driving as an occupation has taken, with drivers regularly complaining of backache, muscle pain, constipation, among many other ailments they suffer due to poor work conditions.
क्वेश्चन ये आ रहा है कि जो बिजनेस को बढ़ेगा और जो बिजनेस को बढ़ाने में योगदान दे रहा है, उसको कनेक्ट करने में योगदान दे रहा है, तो वो क्या बढ़ा? वो तो जैसे था वैसा है और कुछ ना कुछ उसकी बदतर हालत हुई।
The government today has recognized the need for intervention in this sector and stressed the need for the upliftment of truck drivers.
इस क्षेत्र में लगातार बड़े बड़े प्रयास हम कर रहे हैं, काफ़ी परिवर्तन कर रहे हैं, पर ये सब काम आपके सहयोग के बिना नहीं होगा। ट्रांसपोर्ट के जो ओनर्स हैं उनका भी योगदान चाहिए, ड्राइवर का भी चाहिए, कंडक्टर का भी चाहिए, ताकि उनको क्लीन इन्वायरमेंट मिले, उनको अच्छा फूड मिले, उनको अच्छी तनख्वाह मिले, उनके हेल्थ से रिलेटेड या उनके बच्चों की शिक्षा तक के सब सुविधाएं उनको मिले।
मैं तो जी भर गया गाड़ी से, अब अपना और कुछ काम देखेंगे।
मैं अपने बेटे को इस लाइन के दौरे भी नहीं आने दूंगा। लाइन के
Without the work and sacrifice of these unseen workers, we would be unable to function as a society. And what do they get in return? We must change the state of affairs. Can we imagine a future where drivers are proud of the work they do, a job that makes their children proud? And a future where the drivers are fitter, stronger, and healthier, rather than workers sacrificing their lives? How can we be the change makers?
Thank you. These are very important questions that probably we need to answer today or maybe in due course to kind of response. To we may not have ready answer to all these questions that raised through this video. Maybe those are the kind of areas probably we need to really work together on how to really kind of respond to those. So thank you. And in the opening session today, I would like to kind of we have a video message from Professor Prashant Jadhav, who is a global supply chain, public health supply chain expert, and also chair of ASTA and senior fellow at the and professor in INSERT and Harvard Medical School. Because of the time difference, probably he could not join, and he has a video message for all. So I would request our backend team to run the video message of Professor Jadhav. Thank you. Over to team.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you to Dr. Lakshmikant Palo, K-Spire, ASTA, and PPHF for organizing this extremely important event and being thoughtful about trying to understand who are the unseen heroes in the pandemic, especially unseen heroes in the supply chain. I want to start by saying that it is beyond difficult to even comprehend the pain so many of our friends, colleagues, family members, and the people of India overall are feeling at this moment. Let's hope that things get better quickly, and as supply chain professionals, we all let's continue to ensure that whatever critical support that depends on better functioning supply chains, we all continue to do our part to make that happen. In any country, the ability to successfully confront the COVID pandemic or any medical emergency for that matter depends on the resilience and the integrity of the transportation network. And a key part of the transportation network is the trucking industry, and in particular, the truck drivers and their accompanying staff. If we think about the healthcare supply chain across the gamut of things that we have to get to patients, we see that whether it is transporting raw material or excipients or packaging material or API from producers to factories, and then transporting finished product from the factories to the wholesalers, to the hospitals, retail pharmacies, chemist shops, all of that depends crucially on trucking. And even when the primary transport is through rail or something is imported and flown in through air cargo or ocean vessel, the last legs of distribution still depend on trucking. So in a way we can say that almost every health product travels in a truck at one point or the other in its journey between raw material, finished product manufacturing till the time it goes to a patient. It's an oral pill or an injectable or a vaccine. So if trucks stop working, not only does the economy come to a grinding halt, but in the current times, that would mean so many lives would be lost if trucks stopped. Imagine the scenario that trucks which are bringing oxygen as liquid oxygen, or cylinders, or those who are transporting the oxygen concentrators from one region to the other, or are bringing therapeutic supplies, if they were to come to a stop. So there are in India over 10 million trucks, according to estimates, which would mean there are approximately the same number of truck drivers, many of whom live in conditions which are abysmal, very long working hours, averaging up to 12 hours of work in a given day. They travel 400 to 500 kilometers on the road each day, and they have to be away from their families, so they miss key family functions, key events for months together. And on top of this, now the pandemic creates another challenge for them, which is they don't always have the high quality masks or the protective gear that is needed. In fact, some of them don't even have very basic masks and protective gear. And then when lockdowns start, which are crucial for managing a severe phase of the pandemic, the roadside restaurants and motels, or the dhabas, where they can stop for a meal and have a little bit of rest and relaxation, they are also shut down. So anyway, it makes the life of a truck driver extremely challenging, while at the same time they are in the most crucial leg in managing continuity of supplies and resilience in our supply network. So this raises the question, what can we do for the truck drivers, the unseen heroes? The first thing that we've got to put our heads around is, how do we ensure that truck drivers and other essential workers in the trucking industry are receiving the protection they need to carry on in their daily jobs? And when I say protection, I'm referring to three things. I'm referring to their ability to get masks and protective gear, their ability to get tested without testing becoming a cumbersome process for them, and thirdly, and most importantly, their ability to get vaccinated without having to go through a system which can become extremely cumbersome for someone who doesn't have a fixed schedule like you and I do, who can go into the COVID app and select a day or time of the day in a given location because their schedule doesn't allow them the certainty of where they will be 10 days from now, 15 days from now, 20 days from now. And this becomes particularly challenging when we talk about the second dose. So it raises the question, can there be specific sites along the highways which act as vaccination centers for truck drivers? Truck stops along border points or along checkposts. Can there be special centers to vaccinate truck drivers? And that's a question for many of the transport companies. I think the government of India has laid out a protocol for how private employers can set up their own vaccination sites. So it's then incumbent on the trucking companies to see how this can be done. But again, it doesn't have to be just the trucking companies. The shippers, the companies which are shipping, also have an equally important responsibility in this regard. So can the shippers, the larger consumer product, medical, and other companies which are shipping their products in the trucks, can they be a part of a partnership that can be created? And if we do think about creating these designated special sites for truck drivers to get vaccinated, we require many private partners to come in and help in the operational setup and, of course, managing the logistics of getting vaccine doses there, who procures, how is it distributed, lots of questions that you all are deeply embedded and ingrained in now. In the United States, for example, one of the challenges has been that many states require anyone who's signing up to get vaccinated, any kind of site, a mass vaccination site, a pharmacy, or a clinic, to have proof of residency in a given state, and that has worked against truck drivers who are on the move and therefore may not be getting vaccinated in the state in which they have residency. So there are proposals now to circumvent that and also to think about a similar idea of having vaccination centers at truck stops. Then can they get a second dose at a different location? So you get your first dose in one location, but in a different state, in a different geography, where you are during your travels. Could you get your second dose there? And is there all of the paperwork and everything that's required to get that going? And then in the future, if India has a single dose vaccine like the one from Johnson & Johnson, then can truck drivers be included in the priority group or the special group that has greater access to the single dose vaccine, because the loss to follow up or the ability to achieve second dose completion may be a matter of higher inconvenience for truck drivers, so giving them a single dose may help. Anyhow, there are lots of ideas that we can think of collectively. Once again, I'm glad that Lakshmikant has and colleagues working with him have put this together, and there will be good discussions in terms of ideas that we can take forward. Thank you. Be safe, and best wishes for the next few weeks and months in terms of how we tide over this crisis. Thank you.
I think very valuable input, insights, which are more some action point that Professor Jadhav, mentioned, are useful for programming for better life for truck drivers, and also his idea about the vaccination, program for truck drivers, prioritizing this group and how they can be vaccinated. And those are some of the points probably we need to consider for a better program for that. So thank you. And we could not have live him, but his messages are very important for us, and we'll take those to the appropriate authorities, how those can be considered. So thank you. Now in the opening session, our next guest of speaker is Mr. Pavan Masrela, the Managing Director of India and South Asia, BD. And Mr. Pavan is the Managing Director, and he has experience of working in various sectors of medical technology industry for over 17 years across India, Eastern Europe, Middle East, Africa, and US. And he has interest in driving better patient outcomes, improving efficiencies for healthcare providers, and developing future leaders. So I would now like to invite him to share his experience on how these unseen workers, the truck drivers, serve during the COVID challenging time, and how we can work on increasing more collective commitment and enabling environment to prioritize the issue of those unseen workers. Thank you, and over to Mr. Pavan.
Thank you, Dr. Lakshmikant Palo. Can you hear me? Just a confirmation. Good morning. It's a great initiative. I would say a noble initiative on May 1st, the Labor Day. I say a noble initiative because what we've seen in India and any other parts of the world is, unless someone takes up interest of a particular body of workers, usually they do not get the attention. The last time I heard truck drivers in an attentive way in public health was during our HIV crisis, because it was determined that they are the most vulnerable to this spread. And now we are talking about them again because they're actually this time serving to help battle the COVID crisis. So I would say it's a noble initiative, and I hope it's a great start, first step. And as users of this service, I would just say that our commitment to whatever way the group, the body could come together to help them, whether in terms of all the priorities that are listed. My experience of tackling these unseen workers, I would just broadly classify unseen workers, and I know we are focusing on truck drivers, was during the COVID crisis when it was needed that medical device company that I represent, we are essential services. We had to keep our plant running, we had to keep our supply chain running so that hospitals which use our products to deliver medication, manage the COVID patients, said, we need your supplies. And when every part was locked down and governments across the country were just not able to coordinate and connect well, the biggest sufferer was this unseen worker. And our collective conscience was slapped on our face when we had an essential supply to deliver in Bangalore and police beat up our driver. And our driver called saying, what do I do? Do I continue or do I just drop this and go back? And the unseen worker was such a leader that he offered us that he can continue going if you can just make sure that the permissions are given. That's the spirit of this worker, which we are not able to think about. Forget recognition. They are not existing for us. It is part of the service that you expect. So I'm really inspired when Dr. Palo talked about this event with Soumya and said, hey, can you come and share? I said, yes, this is something that we want to do. In our experience, we worked with a great transport partner we had. I wish there are more such partners across the country who actually fed all the employees, treated them as part of his family. And we worked with him to do a small way. How can we enable? And his ask was, don't make my working capital go crunching. Make sure that you pay me on time. And that's all that he asked, not increased rates, not some demands that were impossible to meet. But all he said is pay me on time. So probably the first suggestion I have, and for the panelists and the think tank that is working on this is, could we just start representing them and create one body that represents their needs? Obviously, salaries and commercials are a demand supply situation. And I'm sure that is a harder nut to crack. Nobody can say, okay, I want to increase the salaries and do. It's in the longer interest of that industry that uses unseen workers to pay them well, because if everyone's voice is, my child will not come to this industry, where will the drivers come from? So in the longer interest, the demand supply should take care of the wages. But what we can bring is certain minimum things that they are missing today. Can we bring respect and recognition, as in they exist? The moment that happens, then certain minimum other things that all of us enjoy in our life start coming to them. Can we then create a vaccination policy for them? I can just share the difficulty of that. I and my colleagues, part of an industry body, we were representing to the government that all healthcare worker, medical technology people who work with hospitals and doctors and exposed to the disease, we should get also priority along with frontline workers to get vaccination. And the government's response was, there are hundreds of such groups which are representing, saying they represent frontline. We are not able to prioritize. So I can only start by saying, let's start representing their voice so that we may be in a queue when this becomes available. The second one is obviously testing. Professor Yadav mentioned appropriately that testing and vaccination can we work as a group, and now that it is available and it is private, which means we don't have to depend on government and government's infrastructure, that's something that we could consider. And I can commit to you that Dr. Dickinson, and probably I'll work with my industry body, AdvaMed and MTI in India, to see how we can contribute and support when you start doing it, because we are all beneficiaries of this. So if there is a way you could tie up and procure and deliver these vaccine testing facilities across the country, we could contribute. We may not be able to serve by being there in the front line, but we could definitely help you, enable you to do that. So I'd like to keep my message sharp, crisp, and say, can we just first ensure we get an industry, we get a body to represent their interests, and can we quickly work what is within our sphere of influence to test and vaccinate them so that they get the benefit. And the longer term health conditions, working conditions is something that I'm sure once there is an industry body or once there is a interest group, we will start working, and I'm glad to be part of that. I'd like to thank Dr. Paulo for inviting me and giving me this opportunity. I urge all of you to continue to stay safe. There's absolutely no bed available, no oxygen available. This is a wrong time to fall sick. So please stay safe and don't take chances. You could take chances a month later when the situation eases up. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pavan, and very good kind of insight, and some of the experience your own and the company's experience are great to hear. And three things that what I picked from your deliberation, a committee, kind of we probably have not aware or not seen that there is a committee, really apex body kind of working for this, more maybe representative sectoral people coming and kind of advising on the some of those priorities for this group, kind of that's probably is one great idea to consider and connect to with the appropriate authorities and see how we can be more inclusive of that group, kind of in this. So one idea of that committee or a body could be a great idea. And we know there are some policy gaps, and other speakers will talk about that also. What are the policy and program gaps, how that can be bridged. And maybe the idea from your discussion that redefining or expanding the definition of frontline health workers, because the way that we have seen many of the debates around this, what is the definition, whether it's only the health worker exclusively working, or the sanitation worker, or kind of expanding to truck drivers and other who are in the essential services. Probably that could be priority. Still, even the vaccination program has gone now age-wise, age group-wise, but still this priority need, group need to be included. There are some excluded groups who are equally more vulnerable to the situation. Probably that's a one recommendation. Probably we can really work together, and a long-term health kind of plan for this group. That's what probably you also mentioned. I think these are great ideas. Kind of to see kind of more inclusive stakeholder kind of plan, and kind of how can we draw the policy and program attention kind of towards these issues. Thank you for kind of your kind of insight. We have still 3-4 minutes. Vacant team, is there any question for Mr. Pavan from the audience? We can direct that question, or can you just check?
As of yet, we don't have any questions. I request the audience members to please put in their questions in the Q&A option at the bottom of their screen.
Okay, thank you. So thank you, Mr. Pavan. And yes, if there are some questions maybe coming towards the end, kind of we can have few time to kind of maybe we can direct some questions to you. Thank you. Thank you for your insights. And now we are entering into session 2, and which is more kind of talking about the inside stories, kind of unseen workers and challenges and opportunities during COVID-19. I would like to invite Mr. Samakant Dwivedi to moderate this session. Mr. Samakant has been over 20 years in the supply chain and operation across cross-functional leadership, change management, and implementing processes, improvement and skill development. He is exposure to healthcare industries, customer electronics, FMCG, shipping, and manufacturing. Very cross-sectoral experience. And Samikant is currently, heading the supply chain and global health of Southeast Asia at BD, Singapore. And prior to this, he was engaged with companies like Nokia, Philips, Kevin Care, where he handled various supply chain and business operations. I would like to now, kind of, he's also a pro bono advisor to, PPHF for more on public health supply chain issues, and he's, kind of a mechanical engineer and a lot of experience in the supply chain industry. I would like to invite him to moderate the session. Thank you. Over to Mr. Samakant.
Well, thank you, Dr. Palo. Is my voice audible? Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks. So I think just to kind of bring the context which all of us heard today in the morning, including the documentary, the trucking industry has around 9 million trucks, 8 to 9 million trucks in the road. And we need, apart from the current truckers, almost 9 to 10 lakhs new truck drivers every year. We heard about the issues and we know it continues in spite of the pandemic, especially on the respect and category of the truck drivers where we should position them on that, is that we have treated the truckers more as a reactive mechanism. As an example, so provide contraceptives, to avoid AIDS. I think it's more that, and not as a proactive mechanism to improve their lives and provide sustainable work. How to humanize the life of a truck driver. Actually, to represent them accurately, we must represent them as we should represent ourselves, because they are the engines of the society, and no goods can reach for granted. So the approach of this discussion and subsequently more actionable is to create a platform, as Pawan highlighted, which can help assisting this society and can also enable shape policies, which is something which is also not clear. I know there are policies more on their well-being, but it's not clear and not implemented well, so that we can attract more talent into this generation. When I say talent, trucking is still a skill, it's still a profession. And so that the services can be continued without disruption. We know the implication of what happens and what can happen. So let's not get there and do a reactive work, and how can we do as a proactive. So that's the context of the discussion today. We do have two esteemed panelists, Dr. Gayatri Vasudevan and Mr. Ramesh Kumar. So we'll start with Dr. Gayatri. Dr. Gayatri is chairman for LaborNet. She has dedicated her entire life to provide sustainable livelihood for marginalized workers. She worked in ILO and she's been there. And the recent, when I spoke to her, she was in the middle of the pandemic in a hospital, actually providing services around food. I think Prashant spoke about it. I think one of the biggest challenges is now providing food. So I think I'd like to introduce Dr. Gayatri. And thank you for joining this, in spite of a hectic schedule and the current challenge what we're in. So my first question to you, Dr. Gayatri, is to understand from a labor policy perspective, what do you think the policies we have for this section of society, and what are the gaps according to you?
See, I think one is if they are not full-time workers, which they are not. There is very little policy cover. That I think is the biggest problem here. So anybody who is not a full-time worker does not have much cover at all. So they all fall into what we call the unorganized sector. So assuming let me break this up into those which are in the formal logistics chain and those which are in the more small and medium logistics chain. So I have, and let me take a couple of cases and explain this. So assuming I'm a truck owner and have also a driver, I may have at best 1 or 2 trucks and I run it. The other is I have 10 and I run it. So there are various categories here. Now, all the ones which are in the smaller, they are all paid, but paid on a route basis. I think that's one big problem which exists is there. And if they're not monthly salary, then social security itself becomes a big problem. Now, a lot of the myth around the truck drivers, and the video also really showed that, is that truck drivers earn about 35 to 50,000. And that is really not true, especially now in the today current environment that is there. So in my mind, there are two things which have to be done is because truck drivers are very directly linked to the the logistics and supply chain. If there is like a corporate led fund, and the reason I make the statement is the government has created a fund like that for construction workers. And like that, there are several boards which exist, where they collect it from the employers as a cess fund. Normally, the use of the cess funds are very useless. So you will find less than 1% to 3% of funds are getting utilized there. For example, in the Construction Welfare Board cess funds, if a state of reasonable magnitude like Karnataka has 2,000 crores, you will find that at any point of time, less than 10% of that fund will be utilized because it is supposed to go to the individual and they're never able to figure out how to do that. So one of the things I feel which is possible, especially for this segment, is if you have a set of people who actually let's say use this fraternity, come together and actually structure a fund and make the fund cater to particularly social protection. And by social protection, what do I mean? It is health insurance, old age insurance, and if there is an OPD that is required across board. Because OPD is not covered anywhere in the country, and especially when they go from one place to the other and they are sick, they will have access to no medical facilities. And if they are outsiders, that means they are not going to belong there. So any access to medical care, especially in today's COVID days, is going to become more and more problematic to them. In fact, I've heard things like there is enough facility, but it is for residents. COVID care facilities are for residents, it is not. And that is in districts will say this. So in the city, they may get absorbed and may be able to access, but as they go into the rural areas, they will get barred from there. So I do feel that we need to look at truck drivers from three different perspectives. Perspective one is wage and how is wage controlled. And there are obviously policy guidelines in terms of minimum wage and not minimum wage if in case there is a violation there. And for full-time and part-time, we can work that out. Given the technology advancements, I think gig workforce also can be fairly controlled there. But how do you provide the overall cover if they are not full-time workers? I think that's the important one, which is a gray area here. And as Soumyakant was saying, one of the key problems is food. When lockdowns happen, this time, of course, is not such a strict lockdown, but last time we had to cater to a lot of toll plazas because nobody was willing to sell them the food, even if it was available. I think those are the kinds of challenges which we need to do. And the last point I'll make and stop, and I think that's a bit of a utopian thought at this point of time. But if they're unwell, are there places for them to rest before they are able to go back? Is it possible to actually create that, whether it's at a COVID care facility or at a petrol bunk? I don't know the answers to that, but I think that's also something one should keep in mind, particularly because they're away from home. And the remaining, I think, has been very eloquently said, is in terms of who will come for this profession if it doesn't pay you well. There is no aspiration. So I think these are two ones which are overarching problems which exist for this community, which is not seen as as who owns them is a big question mark. Let me just stop here.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Gayatri. I think a lot of the points you brought up is some of it related to policy. And I think to bring up the voice, as said, this group, what we have formed as ASTA is to make it actionable with the partnership of the private sector, civil society, government, and also foundations like yours who actually working on ground. So that's more collaborative, which we will talk about after this and not stop there. There are some good inputs you provided on food, toll plaza, resting places. So I think some of it is really not clear, and we need to explore further to how to make it happen. One of the points which I also wanted to understand is you have been working on different sectoral approach, I mean, different sectors. What is your feedback on some of these policies which has been successful in some sectors? And what are the drivers? Is there something we can pick up from there and try to replicate in this segment?
See, most of it has been successful in the formal sector. In the informal sector, actually, there has been a struggle to have a good policy framework across informal sector job roles. And especially, as I said, those which don't come under full-time employment, it has been a major struggle there. And that is because the disconnect between who is the employer. If you're not able to establish who is the employer, then I think policy is disintegrating. So I'm sorry, I'm not able to give you a positive answer of best practice and take it from here, because we're seeing it in sector after sector. Just to give you a statistics, India had over 100 plus boards, welfare boards, cashew worker welfare board, to Tendu leaf welfare board, BD welfare board, now construction welfare board. Some are well funded, some are not well funded. But the point is, the issues seem to be plaguing, the same issues seem to be plaguing across. Some are doing better than the others. I'm not saying it's a 0-1. The cess fund, for example, for construction workers has resulted in a lot of collection. But the question is, has it resulted in improved welfare for the construction workers? I think all of us can safely say no. Whereas the other boards have suffered because they don't have a cess fund, and therefore collection itself is poor. So the best practice from the construction welfare board to me is the collection mechanism, the cess collection mechanism. But the negative to me would be the utilization, the poor articulation and utilization. The cashew welfare board, of course, is very limited to certain states, but has functioned better in terms of the utilization. Although they don't have cess and therefore collection is poor, but reaching of cashew farmers has been far better. The BD welfare board has struggled. They have a combination, not really a cess, but they have a guaranteed fund which comes to them. But BD itself being, after construction, that's probably the biggest welfare board, and therefore I'm picking it up. The idea is to stop BD. So while the employers have paid as almost like cess, but the idea is you want to stop BD, but then the whole rehabilitation becomes the mandate of that board. So in the case of the truck driver, we are not looking to replace them. So therefore the BD model will not work. And I also do believe that state mandated boards are not actually ensuring fund utilization well. The whole fund, and today the financial instruments are very advanced compared to many years back. Today you have success notes, you have impact bonds. I'm sure several, if the logistics industry comes together and the supply chain, we're able to integrate, I'm sure with slightly complex financial instruments, it should be managed outside the state. A policy should be regulated by the state, but not fund handled by the state.
Thank you, Dr. Gayatri. One last question is on action. So is there something we can quickly take up from here as a group and start looking at a pilot or initiative from where we can grow? What is your
Yeah,
feedback? What can we
I absolutely believe. I think today, given the situation we are, we can actually pick vaccination as a major issue, and then it can dovetail into healthcare. And you did ask me what are good practices. I actually forgot to mention one. Was the garment industry had come together? The WalMarts and the H&Ms and several Marks and Spencers, etc. They have created like a body. However, the negative of it is it became a compliance body. So it became a checklist. We should watch against it becoming a checklist, but can have the top players come in and say, put a whatever figure, 50,000, 1 lakh for these people. This is the act that we'd like to take off the ground and move it slowly. So have a sort of 3-year plan on what would we like to do with which with which segments. And to me, is wage the segment or is it health the segment? The entry can be either. Both are obviously very, very important.
Okay.
The entry can be either. But the models exist. The models do exist, and I think it's about actually coming together and putting a might behind it to take it off.
Got it. Thank you, Dr. Gayatri. There's a lot of valuable inputs. We'll all put it together and make it actionable and take it forward from here. So thank you for your time. And we will move to the other panelists. Thanks, Dr. Gayatri. Ramesh Kumar, I think it's an honor for that you have been able to kind of join. So you are the owner of and founder of Driver Dunya, which focuses on driving. And Ramesh is also an eminent journalist, and he has dedicated his major part on truck drivers. And one of the unique leaders I find, and we follow and inspired by what he does. He had in fact gone in trucks across India to understand the life of a truck driver. So thank you, Ramesh, for joining. And I would like to ask you my first question, which is, you have been driving this movement for many years. Why do you think the truck driver interests have been ignored? Supply chain is such a big element of even any corporation. So what do you think is the reason for that ignorance?
Yeah. Good morning, everybody, and thank you, Soumya. Thanks for inviting me. Well, I would like to begin with one simple statement that, in a way, I like COVID for a simple reason. Suddenly, right from the Prime Minister to the Panwala outside your society gate, everybody started talking about supply chain. And then, for the simple reason, even the Panwala knows that, in the absence of a proper transportation, he is unable to get the Banarasi pan. Okay, he is unable to get the Banarasi beetle leaves. Okay, so having said that, you asked a very pertinent question. Why he's been ignored? It's very simple. We are a democratic country, and the drivers are like nomads. They don't live in a single place. So obviously, there are elections. When elections take place, whether to the state assembly or to the national parliament, see, these guys are never at their, a place where they have a voting right. None of these guys really, or, participate in the electoral politics. And therefore, they don't form a sizable vote bank. So, see, when these guys are not, so no politician, irrespective of cutting across the party lines, nobody is interested in catering to the needs of their truck drivers. Okay, so that is the main reason why truck drivers' interests are absolutely ignored.
Okay. So, Ramesh, again, thank you for this, update. I had another question in your experience also with covering international, trucking community. What do you think are some of the best practices which we can apply to overcome the current challenge in India? Something which is possible within this group and take it forward.
Yeah. Okay. See, look, everybody spoke about, including Mr. Becker Dickens, Dixon's, Mr. Pavan also spoke about the truckers, trucker stops and all those kind of a thing. If you really ask me, right across India, there is no shortage of oil marketing companies, retail pumps. Okay, so oil marketing companies, Indian Oil, Hindustan Petroleum, Bharat Petroleum, Yessa, Reliance, they all have like a more than I mean, if you really Indian Oil alone has got more than 30,000 retail outlets on the national highways and state highways. Okay, if you add up the rest of them, it definitely crosses a 50,000 retail outlets. Out of them, even if like say around 10% of the retail outlets are large format, like which have rather parking facility, and either they have their own dabas or dabas next door. Okay, this can really be put to use. Unfortunately, all this, like for instance, Indian Oil has created something called a Sarai. Beautiful facilities. I visited almost like 15, 20 right across India, right from Asansol to Chennai. Okay, you go where even Punjab, like you go anywhere, lovely facilities. But the problem is, it is not being really utilized. Like Dr. Gayatri also spoke about, I know, like not utilizing the existing infrastructure. Yes, the infrastructure exists. It has not been promoted for a simple reason. See, most of these petrol pumps, where I am talking about this kind of driver restroom facilities, everything is existing. Okay, so this has been given, the responsibility is given to the, the retail the outlet manager. So when I talk to the retail outlet manager, why the hell, like it's really not been used? He says, see, look, what I am supposed to do? Am I supposed to look after the business in this retail outlet, or I am supposed to cater to the needs of truck drivers? So, in fact, I keep telling as many oil marketing companies as possible, saying that try to create this, driver restroom facilities or Sarais as a separate vertical, and make use of it. Okay, in this context, what we can say, since corporates are also here. See, who is the end user? At the end of the day, who uses transportation? Remember, we are living in an age of outsourcing. See, nobody manufactures anything. So everybody is an assembler. Okay, whether it's a pharma company or automotive company or cement company, they all bring resources together, raw materials together, components together, and assemble. So that is where your vendor management comes. Tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. See, all the stuff comes by road. You have excellent road, you have excellent vehicles, but in the same way, once the finished product, again it has to go to nooks and corners of the country. Okay, so unfortunately, take it from me, none of the corporates really, they don't. I mean, look, they all have a CSR fund. Okay, they all happy saying that we adopted this village, we have done that, we have built toilets here. They are all publicity hungry guys. I'm very sorry, I'm sounding little harsh, but that's a reality. And see, outside, you go to any big factory, outside their gates, you will never ever find a proper driver restroom. So when the trucks come out, either for waiting for a load, it's not that say, unlike in the West, where the company tells okay, this is the time you come and this is the window in which you come and take your load. Whereas in India, see, all the truck, there is a demand supply mismatch, so there are more trucks than what is really required. So they all go and wait outside. There is no proper restroom facility. So in fact, I'll tell you, from my own experience, I traveled around 2.5 lakh kilometers. I traveled right across India. Every single state I travel, out of which at least 30,000 kilometers I worked as a Kalasi to understand in multiple trips. So every single morning I got up, taken up a bottle of Pepsi or Coca-Cola, and went behind the bushes to shit. Okay, so there is no facility. So even if really go on the highways and ask the petrol pumps, okay, all the petrol pumps definitely have like a toilet facilities. The moment they know you're a truck driver, they will never allow you. They will say ye pani nahi aa raha, ye kharab hai. Okay, so you have facilities, you have huge trucker restroom facilities, but it should not be really put to use. Corporates can really start, instead of talking big things, doing lip service and doing it allocate. Instead, see, they can really focus, allocate X amount of a percentage of the fund for creation of driver restroom facilities outside the factory gates. Same way we are talking about Amazon, Walmart, Flipkart. They all have massive distribution centers. Okay, thanks to GST. Earlier there used to every state used to have warehouses. Today there are a very limited number of. They reduced the thing, so that's all gone for a large format. So there they can create the right kind of facilities. So that's not being done. So this all needs to be done. So it's all doable. Instead of asking the government to come out with some policy to implement that, implement this, See, let's start, trying to take care of the people. Actually, don't forget the fact, these truck drivers, whether it's an inbound or outbound, they service you to make your medicine, you make your cement, you make your car. Okay, so, 2 days, the trucks go off the road, you and I will be, booking mara jayega. Okay, so that's a kind of a thing.
Thank you, Ramesh. I think the experience and the passion speaks with what you have gone through in the stories. I picked a few points. I think one of the biggest point I find is on the case of bias, which is a clearly can be addressed with corporates and companies like us. How and also different professionals like us in supply chain. We are the people who should be driving internally. Actually, that's the step one. How can we build an extra toilet for the truck drivers? I think that's a very valid point, but it's a critical point which I got from you. Second is use the clarity on the roles. I think one is that what should be done? You have created toilets, but how do we enable the truckers to take use of the facilities? And the third big point is around collaboration. So that's still not done enough. So maybe we use this forum. So as I said to you, this group of ASTA focuses on truck drivers. So we will continue doing that with you, sir, and also get some of the corporates who are willing to work on this together. So that was the two part. I think one was to look from the policy, from impact and what Dr. Gayatri, how we can do together again, and again from you, sir, to understand what we can do within ourselves. So thank you for your feedback, and really pleasure to have you. Interest of time, we have one more session, but we'll continue to engage with both of you as we proceed in this journey to change the unseen bias and change the life of an unseen worker. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I now move on to Anup. Anup is going to drive the second session. Over to you, Anup.
Thank you, Soumya. So do we have Mr. Umesh? I think Umesh has, he was there, but I think he stepped out. So we will start, the session with Ram. But first of all, this session is.
So Anup, just a minute. I think before I missed one point. So just to introduce Anup. So Anup has been, in the industry as a logistic professional for the last more than 2.5 decades, or rather 3 decades. So he's been a director for HP. He has worked in Becton Dickinson, worked in HCL, and right now he has a firm. He's the CEO of Caseware Solutions, working on the SME, MSME, and the non-profit segment. So over to you, Anup. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Soumya. So in this session, basically, this is the third part of our session today. The key points which we intend to discuss in this session are the future of health and well-being of these truck drivers, building momentum for a more prosperous, equitable, and sustainable world where these constituents of our society are also included. And the third one is the forming some new perspectives on the post-pandemic future. Of course, we are running into the current pandemic, but we definitely see a future where we'll all be vaccinated, and I think we'll have a better kind of situation where we can work around more sensibly in this direction. So Umesh is back. So thanks, Umesh. We have, Umesh Madhyam. It is my pleasure to introduce our eminent panel of speakers. First is Mr. Umesh Madhyam. Umesh is the president of Chamber of Visionary Supply Chain Leader, a think tank on supply chain, which includes, companies like he represents Coke, Nestle, Walmart, and Reckitt Benckiser. Umesh is currently the Vice President Supply Chain at Hindustan Coca-Cola Beverages Private Limited. He has been associated with Coke India for the last over 8 years, moving up the ladder from the National Head, Infrastructure and Logistics, now to the VP at India. His earlier stints have been with Heinz and L'Oreal. Umesh has been a winner of 40 under 40 Supply Chain Super Achievers 2019. Umesh, I know him personally, and he's done some pioneering work in the trucking industry. We saw Umesh in the video which we played, so he's so passionate about this industry and has done a lot of work. So we would like to, we are pleased to have him today with us. So Umesh, welcome. So I have two quick questions to Umesh, and I think his view from the industry side and a major user of trucking industry would be quite valuable for us. So Umesh, the first question which I have is, we understand that Coke engages with the driver community quite closely. What are some of the good things which have happened on the ground in the last few years? I know you've done a lot. And what you think are still some gaps that need to be addressed as far as their welfare is concerned? Anything which has changed at the systemic level due to the pandemic? So pre-pandemic and now we are into the pandemic, how the scenario has changed and what Coke has done, in this area. Over to you,
Sure.
Umesh.
Thank you, Anup. You can hear me clearly? Just a thumbs
yes.
up. Thank
Absolutely
you.
clear.
So much. First of all, good morning to fellow panelists and the audience available who is seeing us and hearing our point of views. I think great program on drivers. I've always been an advocate of this part of the community, which is very close to my heart, because this is when we realized during these unprecedented times, during COVID, where driver has suddenly gained a lot of importance. I heard Mr. Ramesh from Driver Dunia also saying that suddenly Mr. Modi and everybody is talking more about supply chain. Now, if you have essential goods allowed for lockdowns, if you have businesses which are key businesses like drugs or medicines or sanitizer or masks during COVID, the one important element of this entire supply chain happens to be this poor driver. And this guy is actually making all of this happen. So that's the kind of importance I think right now drivers have just got post-pandemic, where the significance and this importance CEOs and industries have started to recognize and started to think about that if I don't have a driver, how does it pinch my entire business? So I think that's one big, I would say, pleasant surprise which this pandemic has taught us and senior leaders from the industry. Pre-pandemic, I think the major problem with the drivers in India is that, like we saw in the video, these drivers don't feel respected. That's the basic problem. There is nothing called as workplace rights for the drivers by the government. We do have logistics ministry now. There's a lot of work which is happening on overall infra, on overall regulations, statutory boundaries are getting opened up, things are getting simpler. But I think about drivers, there is still a lot of scope to be done. Even if there is a basic workplace rights, which we could easily inspire from the policies made in Germany or in Australia or even in the US, I think that itself is a good start. Now, why that's not happening? I think that's not happening because we are already at the cusp of a situation where we have drivers less than the capacity of trucks available. That's the first biggest problem to begin with. So if we have about 15 to 25% of our capacity of transport unutilized because of lack of drivers at any point in time, I think that creates, first of all, a bigger problem. Like we saw in the video, if you talk to a driver doesn't want his or his relative basically to become a driver. So there are many things, including as basic as the cabin, which is without a temperature controlled cabin, where the problem begins with. So that's about the situation which a lot a government can do, and we can get inspired from other countries who have evolved in this space. Now, what industries can do, or I can share a couple of things which Coke does better. One is that we have a DMC. We have a driver management center for every driver in every site of HCCB. When the driver comes in, he goes through a DMC. He is given proper counseling. He is checked if he is undergoing fatigue. He is checked if for the last 8 hours, was he driving? Was he resting? Is he coming from home? Is he coming from another trip? Should he rest? If he rests, about 50% of our facilities today are equipped with restrooms for drivers. We have invested in restrooms where we could give this gentleman some rest. The third thing which we are doing is that yard turnaround time for trucks is the super major KPI on which the entire shipping teams are evaluated on. They are in fact incentivized on this, which means that from a gate report of a driver till a gate out, if it was taking 10 hours same month last year, and today you're down to 8, we encourage that kind of behavior and try to kill bottlenecks from start to end. Now, one thing is, of course, depending on the people on the ground to make this change. The other is, how do you centrally do it? So we were one of the initial companies who went into digital signatures. So what we do is, from gate report to gate out, one full step we eliminate completely, because the invoice comes out with the signatures. So you don't need to go pillar to post to have the shipping manager available to sign an invoice document. So that's digitally signed already. We palletized almost 85% of what we produce. Now please understand, we are one of the largest FMCGs in this country. We do thousands of shipment. For sake of confidentiality, I can't disclose that number on this call, but there are thousands of shipment we do per day. Palletizing most of them improves your dock time by 300%. I don't take 6 people for 3 hours to load a truck on the dock. It's 20 minutes for 20 pallets, period. It's as simple as that. We have loading machines which also load trucks in less than 3 minutes in 5 of these places, all India. And these are automated machines which have pre-loaded pallets onto them. And then there's a load plate which gets inside the bed of a truck. It can go inside any customized truck or a market truck and load this. So what I'm trying to say is that there's a lot of work which the industry can do in the yard to have a better experience for the driver and let him plan his life in terms of when does he want to sleep, when does he want to go home back, when does a trip start, when does the trip end. All of this planning is what we can help him with and try to work on this. Now, this is something which we can do. Probably due to pandemic, Anup, what people have started to do is focus a little bit on safety. People have started to give importance to a little bit of safety. I think there's a lot of improvement. To be fair, it was Coke, Castrol, I would say probably Shell, and there were a couple of other companies, DuPont, who had significant importance on safety of drivers. I think now this is going manifold. There are people like Nestle, there are people like Britannia, there are people like Amazon who are talking to us, learning from us, and trying to do a lot of things around safety. But I would still urge, this guy needs respect. Beyond safety, I think there is time for us to look at workplace rights, to look at all these small things which we can, contribute and make a driver's life better. So for COVID, for example, HCCB was one of those companies which started with a driver insurance. Now, this is not a medical insurance. It's important to understand the need of a driver. He does not need a medical insurance. He might already have a medical insurance. The point is, when COVID hits him or his family, his livelihood is suffering for those 20 to 30 days. We had an insurance. The moment he shows a COVID positive report, he gets X thousand rupees, X lakh rupees in his account in 48 hours, which secures his income at least for a month. And that's how, we try to motivate and work and do CSR bit as well for this kind of community. Separately, right now, post-COVID, we have started something which is called as trip insurance for long hauls, where for every trip, the driver is covered. I know there are policies around what the logistics ministry came up with, but there's a lot of process which gets into, and there's a lot of rigmarole which the family gets into post an accident for a driver to get that money. So this is a very simplistic process where we insure them for a particular trip if the trip lasts for 5 days. During that LR validity of that trip, if there is something happens, the amount automatically gets transferred to their nominee. And we collect this information when he does the trip. Because when he's doing the trip, we have a e-digital kiosk which trains him about the behaviors, what he should exhibit on the road. and at the end of it, he sends this information as a nominee in the same portal, which gets connected, and he receives an insurance certificate for that particular trip. So I think these are few things I would want to leave at the table for people to ponder about, think, and try to see how they can, try and replicate these best practices and make the life of a driver much better. Back to you, Anup.
Thanks, Umesh, for your very elaborate discussion on this. You did touch upon a lot of things which the industry is doing and what Coke is doing in collaboration with the industry. My second question is more policy related. You did touch upon and I remember in my part discussion during my PhD research with where I discussed about the driver welfare. You talked about the air conditioning of the cabin, but it hardly gets implemented, and that's where the problem begins. So besides this, what is the industry doing for this community at the policy level? Through direct work at the industry level. So is there an industry body, FICCI, SOCHM, they do some work, but really at the grassroots level is something happening. Is there something in the new transport policy for the driver welfare and their families?
Okay, so as CVSCL, we are working very closely with Mr. Pavan Agarwal and the Special Secretary Office for Logistics Ministry in the Industry of Commerce and Industry. And there are about 6 streams on which the work right now is going on, which I can't share in detail, but there's a lot of work which is happening around logistics where the piece to driver is definitely being touched upon. Let me tell you, the workplace rights for the driver is being worked upon for, I think, more than 2 years now. So there is work which is already going on this. The whole problem is how to bring it to life. If you recollect, in 2019, there was also a little notification which was issued by the Logistics Ministry during Mr. Siv Selam's time, where temperature-controlled cabins were written very clearly there, but the OEMs represented that as ventilators, and they gave a small lousy fan kind of machines in each and every cabin, and said that, okay, now the temperature is controlled inside the cabin, which actually did not happen. So I think there's a lot of work which we need to do as an industry, come together and give those ideas to the ministry so that these things are not taken as loopholes by anyone else. I'm not saying OEMs are taking advantage of it. All I'm saying is these need to be very clearly made and very clearly advocated to the ministry so that these notifications are a little more sharper. Okay. So I do have a draft of the logistics plan which is being rolled out right now. We are trying to contribute as CVSCL to make it a little bit more sharper so that all these things become more clearer. So there definitely is hope, Anup. Right. And with the new focus on logistics ministry, I'm sure in the next 6 to 8 months, there should be a lot which should come out. If we are not 100% satisfied, I think even if we are 50-60%, it's a good start.
Very good, Umesh. We have one question from Dhruva Vishwanathan. His question for Umesh. Can the driver coverage and workplace rights be implemented when the transportation is outsourced to third party? This is because the same driver may work in multiple companies in case of outsourced logistics.
Absolutely. So I'll give you an example of, let's say, one country, let's say Australia. So it is mostly governed by the OEM. It's not governed by the company. So the OEM builds, let's say Eicher, for example, builds a truck which comes with a GPS. The GPS has a different kind of notification system where the driver is allowed to, let's say, drive only for 8 hours at a stretch, and probably every 3 hours he's supposed to take a break of 30 minutes. Just as an example. The experts might have a better view of this, but just as an example. So all of this is recorded. And provided to the consignor, who is the preceding consignor, that this is what the driver has been behaving, so that the consignor can rate the driver accordingly. Just typically like an Uber, he's a 4-star driver or a 1-star driver or a 5-star driver, and basis that give them loads. This is exactly what today happens in a country like a Germany or in Australia, where the drivers are running X kilometers, X hours per day, very clearly monitored. Again, since it happens between the ministry and the OEM, it is very, very tightly regulated because the odometers, the GPS, etc., is very, very tightly, controlled, and there is a central repository of data, etc., which is available. Second, on hardware, again, in terms of temperature control, heaters or ACs, depending on the environment and the geography they belong to, is controlled by the OEM. The OEM cannot release a model without that feature, is how it is regulated. So then workplace rights 60 to 80% तो उधर ही हो जाता है. उसका खाली implementation is given to consigners, and then separately I know from Coca-Cola Metal in Australia that there are audits which happen on those companies on how much of those workplace rights they are following.
Okay.
So they are supposed to show a report that last month I did, let's say, 50,000 consignments. Out of 50,000 consignments, 49,980 consignments actually happened with all 100% workplace rights, and all drivers were complying to all these 10, 11 areas of compliance. So that's how strict it is, and it is absolutely possible. It's not impossible to reach there, even for India.
Thank you, Umesh. Thank you. We can go on and on with you on this topic. Just to summarize a few thoughts which Umesh had pointed out. One is that he feels that there is a realization by the industry in terms of with the pandemic for the driver welfare. Some good practices which Coke has implemented are the DMC, the Driver Management Center, the yard turnaround time, digital signatures, and palletization. Excellent, ideas. Also, he mentioned about the focus on safety, the workplace rights, and the trip insurance. So thank you, Umesh, so much, and
pleasure.
Really
Happy to contribute. Thank you.
Great to have you on the issue. In this third session, the next speaker panel member is Mr. Ram Kolavenu. He is the CEO of Foundation for Excellence. Ram has been working in the social sector for over 7 years now. He is currently working on providing support to economically underprivileged and academically bright students in India complete their higher education. Prior to this, he was of the core group at the LaborNet and was instrumental in growing the organization from a startup to impacting livelihood of about 1 billion beneficiaries from bottom of the pyramid. He has been conferred with Prominent Impact Player Award for work in this space. Before joining social sector, Ram has spent about 16 years working in the leadership roles in global organizations, including Unilever and Tesco, with demonstrated capabilities and expertise in delivering large-scale sustainable solutions and building high-performance teams. Welcome, Ram, on this panel. So, Ram, welcome once again. The first question which I have for you is that you've worked long in the industry and the social sector. You know both sides of the world. Where do you see any NGO or any such agency working to address the driver issues, either for them or for their families? The NGO involvement, per se.
Morning, everyone. Glad to be part of this particular panel. Getting back to your question, Anup, I think from the way I think Umesh spoke really well on what are the things which are coming up new. I'm a little dated because I was in the industry about 7 years back, probably. So very glad to see some of these changes. But I'll give you a perspective. I think some of what Umesh has spoken is something which is new, which is happening. Probably some of these members are doing. Well, having spent the time in retail, FMCG, and logistics space, my thing on the way we look at trucker community, driver community is unseen as far as industry is concerned. As far as NGO is concerned, we have actually branded them as bad boys, and then that's how we try to operate with them. So going back to industry side, within an unorganized sector, they are actually one level below an unorganized sector. As I said, they are unseen. The amount of rigor which we have on contract workforce, Contract Labor Act, or minimum wages, or things of those nature, which we do with any other labor engagement which happens, does not happen when we do with the trucker community, though they are actually the backbone of the entire supply chain. So at best, what happens is we get a background verification certificate that this guy is not as bad. He's actually got no police background, no background. So that's the background validation checks which happen. So to be able to bring them to a particular stature within unorganized sector, saying that bring them to a par, saying that the minimum wages. There are, if you go and I was also talking to my friends in the logistics area, in the e-commerce space, trying to work whether there are basic things which have been put in their contracts, as in how many hours the particular driver can drive, and so on and so forth, which are there. Whenever someone is working beyond a particular number of hours, we know that they need to be a overtime which should be paid to the labor board. And none of those things exist in those kind of things. They probably are existing in few places which are very, very organized at top level. But that's a bigger problem from the industry standpoint. Of these people are unseen and are not thought about. I think same thing holds good from a standpoint of what is happening in the infrastructure getting developed or the newer vehicles which come. The fact that we are not integrating the infrastructure with the facilities for these people in the national and in a state networks is something which says that it's unseen even by the policymakers when they're actually creating the infrastructure. So these people are on the ground 12 hours into 12 hours in a day, and probably 12 to 15 days in a month, and that's the hardship which they go through. I'm very surprised with the demand supply gap which is there, how it's still running. It's going to be bursting sometime or the other. So coming back to NGO, and there are very few NGOs who work in this space. Very few NGOs who are working exclusively for truck driver community. Even the ones which are working are, as I said, they branded this as a bad boys. What I need to do is to make him aware of HIV thing, make him aware how drunken driving is so bad, make him aware of how road safety is important, and they don't understand this one. So I'm not even talking about going to their families. With the truck drivers itself, I think what work which we do in the NGO space is very, very less at this point of time. And it is also, actually we're doing probably more harm to the image of a truck driver by having this kind of only this kind of programs saying that, you're bad guys, will try to work with you. And also the fact that these are all, Ramesh used it as a nomad as a word, but that is what it is, right? The NGO, we don't have more NGOs working in that particular space is because the evolution of NGO happens when there is a concentration of a set of people together. It could be a community, it could be a number of people staying together. If you look at any of the other side, any of the unorganized sector, be it a construction sector, be it a manufacturing, sector, which is unorganized in nature, and so on and so forth, there are a group of people who are being together or work together in a particular sort of a community, which is a natural evolution of an NGO in that particular space. So I think that's where the challenge has been in not having NGOs working in this particular space a lot. And those who are working for specific reasons. They're all important reasons, but I'm saying it is not at the forefront of what they need to do. They're not working on grassroots level ones on how do I make life better for these people? How do I actually work on skilling these people to be able to get into better jobs? I think we also have little aspirational drivers versus normal drivers with a kind of a logistics sector getting a little more organized, right? So I think that path is not laid down to be able to work in that sector in a very streamlined and structured fashion. So to say. If that answers your question, Anup.
Yeah, thank you, Ram. My second question, you did partially answer. Basically, if there are no non-profit companies addressing this segment, how do you think this can be achieved, and what needs to be done? As you mentioned that very few NGOs and non-profits are into this space. So what do we do as next steps? And if not, they are not there. What in your view can be done to specifically address this segment of society? From the future preparedness, what can we do? How do we bring in more interest in this area? As we saw that there are millions of truck drivers, but they are spread out. They are as you mentioned, they are even below the kind of the unorganized sector. So what are your thoughts to have some momentum around this society?
So these people are probably the right definition of Musafir hai na ghar hai na tikana type of thing, right? So I think to be able to bring this community together, they need to be champions, in my view. I think we have few. Pawan spoke a little bit about it. I mean, I alluded, and Ramesh and Numesh spoke about it. I don't know the nature of the champion. It's I think the one is the various different sectors to be able to bring a facelift to the entire community of drivers and truckers. So it could be a conglomerate of various different entities, but very important for us to be able to bring business into the picture. The likes of Umesh and the other people who are very big consumers of this trucker community, and I think the automotive manufacturers who are actually doing the truck manufacturers and all that, right? To be able to bring this community sort of together and form something which actually champions the cause. The first thing and foremost is to be able to give a facelift of this particular thing. And then once you start giving a facelift and starting to also this core group start championing about bringing some about changes in the policy advocacy side of it, also to be able to spread the awareness within the users of this particular services of this particular drivers. So I think the formation of that particular champion group is so important. And then there will be different subgroups, sub themes which these people will be starting to work on. And to that, we can go on and about saying that government is not doing it, government is doing that. And even with that, and Gayatri spoke a little bit about how various different groups have been formed. It is a momentum which needs to start building within the user community, and unless that is added along with what is happening with the policy level changes, it will not come through very well. I can the classic examples are we gone and built various different toilets across the country. We're not being of use because we're not doing any maintenance of that. I mean, it's not about doing one big thing and then probably saying that everything else will fall in place. So to be able to do that, I think there's a momentum which needs to be built in. There's a championing which needs to happen by a specific set of unit of people. And then industry needs to be part of it. Industry needs to basically understand, and they need to give a facelift. I think during this pandemic, we have seen everyone, I mean, including the delivery boy of Flipkart and Amazon's, actually getting so much of airtime, saying that these are the champions. Behind them is stuck as a truck driver who's not even spoken about in any of these things. So foremost is bring this person in upfront as a champion of doing things. As a basic one. I mean, if you so the inner circle and an outer circle. Inner circle is lifting that person internally with a facelift of what is being done. Ensure that whatever privileges are being given are done effectively. Bring in technology aspects to make life easier. The basic facilities which are there. The outer circle is the one I think when we zip past through the toll gates and all, we just see these trucks lined up and everyone is sitting with their papers trying to get these things done. They're harassed time and again everywhere. I think bringing some technology interventions to be able to, like Umesh was talking about how without paperless, they're actually able to move within this sector, how we can actually start having that. And then along with the infrastructure which is being laid in the outer circle, bring in those elements which will actually provide some kind of facilities for these truck drivers, because they spend most of the time on the roads there. So that would be something which we should do. I don't have an answer about who the champion would look like, but I think because they are fragmented, Anup, it is some group like this which needs to come together and champion that cause and bring industry experts together.
Thanks, Ram. So the key message which I get from you, maybe in your words, could be the formation of the champion. So how do you think the Dr. Gayatri talked about the kind of a corporate fund. She said that we can have probably a corporate fund. So that corporate fund supporting this champion kind of setup. Do you think that would be the way to go?
Yeah, I think when I say that corporates need to come together, it is also because of creating a fund for these people. I mean, I think while we can parallelly work on how we can form a government-related soup and get those kind of things, because a portion of what is being collected on the road as the taxes should probably go into usage of welfare of these people. I mean, so it's a long-term process to be able to start putting those things in. The shorter one is to be able to. This is not a big community. I mean, as much as we are saying that is a huge one, multiple lakhs and so on and so forth. Given that the workforce which is there in the country, it is probably a little more easier problem to solve if we bring in focus with those groups, and then a portion of their CSR, if they start looking in actually benefiting of this particular group, it's a matter of time to be able to give that facelift to that. So I think yes, I think CSR has a provision for doing this. We should bring these groups of people who are working in that particular space to be able to say how do you spend that particular thing on the trucker community.
Thank you so much, Ram, for your valuable suggestions. I think some good thoughts from your side. One is that, forming champions with business interests. Status, their status needs to be lifted from, you mentioned that they are even in the lower, strata of the unorganized sector, and, branded as the bad boys, and then, kind of addressed through that NGO mentality, just to correct that. So I think it has to go beyond, much beyond that, with the work which is happening at the ground level. Thank you so much, Ram, for your valuable suggestions. The third member on the panel is Mr. Birendra Bisht. So welcome, Birendra.
Thank you.
Birendra is an entrepreneur with 20 plus years of professional experience in creating tech-enabled products for solving hard challenges faced by the society. He's a subject matter expert in supply chain, transportation and logistics, a functional leader in IoT, analytics and artificial intelligence domain. Birendra is founder and CEO of Untitled Transport Private Limited, branded as Sephur. Sephur is in the business of skilling and certification of commercial drivers using IoT and AI technologies. At Sephur, he aims to develop and certify all the commercial drivers in India, thereby making a sustainable impact on the driver employability and road safety challenges in the Indian society. So nice to have you, Birendra, with us. Thanks for your time. So Birendra, the first question which I have today for you is that you've been engaging directly with the drivers and provide them, digital interventions for improving their work efficiency. So do you think these help them to overcome some of their health and well-being issues as well?
Good morning, first of all, to all my fellow panelists, as well as the people in audience. And good morning to you, Anup.
Morning.
I represent Sephur over here. We are in the business of engaging with the drivers using technology and analytics, and with the focus of improving their employability as well as safety on the roads. My personal take on drivers. Each driver is an individual, is a separate individual, has his own thought patterns. What we have realized is that there are 4 key aspects that the driver tries to balance out. One is, of course, about his income from a trip that he can make. Second is if he can deliver on time. The third is about his safety, whether he can be safe at the end of the trip. And lastly, about the health issues, the long-term health issues especially. Now, there are these 4 dimensions. If we are able to bring out a balance for individual drivers, for each driver separately on these 4 issues, I think we would have solved to a great extent a lot of challenges the drivers face. In terms of their poor conditions, work conditions, and also in terms of their, the extent of livelihood they can have. So here we are trying to gather data about drivers on their driving behaviors, very granular level data, trying to establish these trade-offs. Everything depends on the driving behavior. It's a complex, notion. We try to bring about these trade-offs explicitly. The immediate things that the driver worries about is whether he can make adequate money from a trip, and also whether he can, reach the trip, deliver it on time. He's less conscious about safety. It's not something that goes on in his head when he's driving. He assumes that he is a good driver and he will reach safely. He is definitely not conscious about what happens to him 10 years, 15 years down the line, whether he'll be having, once he reaches 45 years, 50 years, whether he'll still be able to drive or not. These questions don't occur to him when he is in his 20s, 30s, and early 40s. And in the video also, there was a mention that a lot of the drivers get physically handicapped. They have health issues that become paramount during the later years. And you'll not find too many drivers above the age of 50 who like to drive, who continue to drive. So what we are trying to do is use data about these individual drivers driving, and then through very careful application in the form of personalized counseling to the drivers, regular counselings to the drivers, we are helping the drivers discover their own limits, and also about how they can benefit by knowing themselves better. So just to give an example, we interact with drivers almost on a monthly basis, the ones who we work with, and we help them understand what aspects of their driving are causing how much of a fuel wastage. Once you start, so the first thing is we need to get the attention of the driver so that he can empathize with our insights, and he can, put these in his mind over a longer period of time. The easiest thing is to talk about how he can improve his fuel efficient behavior, and how he can improve the availability of trucks, how he can maintain safety as well as deliver on time. Once you start answering these questions, the driver becomes far more receptive to you to understand the safety and the health implications that we want to talk about. So we help each driver understand, firstly, how he can make more money by saving fuel. We bring about the concept of what we have pioneered, known as safety spots. So people know about black spots and hot spots, in a journey. But safety spot is a way by which we help the driver understand that, look, all the black spots, which are high-risk driving areas that you encounter on your journey, you need to be extra careful over there. And if you think that your delivery performance might get suffered because of that, then there are these safe driving zone areas where you can make up for demonstrating extra caution in certain other high-risk areas. So through these, and of course, these are very specific to the individual driver, to his individual trips, so he can relate to the insights in a very quick and easy manner. That brings about some kind of positivity in the mind of the driver, and then we start talking about how he can improve his behavior to reflect on safe driving as well as long-term driving. So here, we must recognize that each driver is a unique individual. He cannot be compared with any other driver, even his peers. Much like you have the athletes, you have someone who likes to, who is a marathon runner, can run for hours together, and then there are these sprinters who complete 100 meters in 10 seconds. Now, they both are athletes, but the kind of requirements and the kind of routine they have is completely different. Similarly, we have the drivers. Some drivers like to drive more in a day. Doesn't necessarily mean that they are getting fatigued. they are a higher risk on the road. It's just that they have a better stamina. Knowing what the stamina of an individual driver is really helps in defining how the driver should be driving. So we carefully create the risk profile of drivers, help them understand that, look, you are, let's say, a driver who should take a rest every 1.5 hours or 2 hours of driving, but take a short rest, 15-20 minutes, no more, and then move on. And then there are drivers, we advise them that, look, you have the capacity to drive for 3.5-4 hours continuously, but once you have taken a rest, you need to take a longer rest to rejuvenate yourself. It gets very personalized and individualized at a driver level. Now, these are the ways in which we help the drivers get their mind transformed and oriented towards their well-being and towards safety. So there is the concept of hotspots and safety spots we try to imbibe into the mind of a driver so that he focuses on safety regularly. And then we talk about his stamina levels, how he compares with others, how he can make the best use of, short runs, continuous runs, to maintain his well-being over a longer period of time.
Thank you. Thank you, Viren, for your excellent ideas. My second question is that, specifically, yours is, I think, a mix of technology versus the study of the driver individual behavior. So how do you see the technology helping in bringing up this community, at a particular level? And are there any synergies with some other actions? And finally, can a platform like Astha, where we are running this, what can we do in terms of providing a technical, techno-social, kind of intervention in this area?
Yeah. So I think technology, in my own opinion, technology has a very big role to play in furthering this driver community. The safety of drivers, and we of course interact with the drivers on a individualized basis. We talked a lot. Other panelists talked a lot about creating respect for the community. I think when more and more people interact with the drivers, they will automatically feel a sense of involvement and engagement in the wider society. Unfortunately, not many people want to interact with the drivers, or if they interact, the interaction is usually in a very rough and tough manner. Technology, by knowing more and more about the drivers, we can help them. We can help have very custom policies designed for the drivers, and we can help them understand about the routes that they're going to. A lot of times accidents happen because a driver is new to a route. He doesn't know how to negotiate a particular section of road. So technology data can help sensitize the drivers about where can the hotspots lie on his route and how he should be negotiating them. So safety is directly, benefited from technology. As far as a platform like Astha is concerned, I think when we talk about interacting or treating drivers as individuals, having a very personalized attention given to each individual. At one scale, it may come up that how are you going to serve, let's say, 10 million drivers that are in the country when you are looking at them one by one? So the question of scale versus individualized engagement or attention becomes a key trade-off. I guess that platforms like Astha have a key role in engaging with the drivers. And of course, the engagements are based completely on the data. So, the personalized data of the driver. So that is one definitely big area where Astha can play a significant role. Rolling out the or treating individual drivers and then scaling them up at a macro level is one definite area. And of course, secondly, we want the drivers to get skilled, but at the same time, they should get treated in a professional manner. The way we treat corporate employees, drivers should be treated as none other than corporate employees only, which means that they should be evaluated on their performance. They should have KPIs, balanced KPIs, and then there should be some level of differentiation among the drivers. We must have, as an industry, a mechanism to know that, look, X driver is a great driver. He ticks on the various aspects, on various KPIs that we have, and the other driver is not so great. So the industry must have that mechanism to identify individuals and treat them appropriately. I think that will be a fair treatment of drivers rather than trying to treating each of them equally, which again will create distortions. Okay. So that has been our learning so far, and how we see a platform like Astha coming in, creating the right kind of policies and mobilizing the industry to have the right kind of individualized policies applicable to drivers.
Thanks, Viren. So your suggestion in just a few words, final comment.
I think the important thing is look at drivers as individual entities. Even when you're crafting policies like corporates do, maintain individuality as far as possible. Yeah, I think that's the most important thing. Drivers are individual human beings, and they need, when you talk about respect, it has to be at each individual driver level.
Thank you, Viren. Thank you for your great ideas. I've listed down a few of them. You mentioned about the safety spots, the engagement with the drivers at the individual level. Every driver is being unique, and increase interaction. Treat them as employees wherever it is possible to form KPIs. Then scale versus the individual, and how a platform like Astha can contribute in this direction. Thank you so much for your valuable ideas. I would so this ends our third session of this webinar. I will like to now hand over to Dr. Palu to conclude the entire session and thank the panelist members. Over to you, Dr. Palu.
Thank you, Anup, and it's a great kind of discussion, and very important recommendations are coming. So there is a question I can see also in the chat box now, kind of how we can really at this point, pandemic time, we can prioritize this truck drivers group, how we can include them, as a part of the vaccination program.
Yes, this is
so
a
I
question.
think that's kind of, I will start with that. Kind of probably the time, like we as a PPHF as an organization, we have been supporting kind of our own way through different CSR support from the corporates to on COVID hospitals, then the community, the more kind of on the testing, like RT-PCR testing, then all the oxygen issue, kind of COVID hospitals and all those, and vaccination support also we have started. And what we have taken some kind of factory sites where drivers are included, but it's a very small segment at this point of time. I think the response is high, and yes, there are challenges around awareness, kind of drive. The vaccine hesitancy is still there, even if this COVID, increased COVID cases has motivated probably as a fear factor, kind of more, people are registering and coming up. We know all the challenges about the state, the shortage of vaccine. But one idea probably could be, we can, on behalf of Astha, we can send a recommendation together to Ministry of Health, and the Niti Aayog and also the COVID management committee, at the national level, and also to the respective state to include, kind of drivers, as, the essential frontline health worker. That could be one suggestion. The other could be, if we can really work together towards creating, I think many of the panelists also, kind of mentioned that a kind of a short-term, kind of a COVID vaccine support program for drivers exclusively, kind of, or other unseen workers. That is another way, maybe a crowdfunding or some corporate initiatives, kind of the CSR, kind of initiative could be one way also to see if, kind of we can, start a drive, around this, truck drivers, and support and mobilize them, and also create. Even Professor Jadhav also talked about some ideas, how this vaccination can be done. If we can think about that as a platform, maybe some of the interest leaders from this group or others that who could not join today, we can discuss this idea and see how we can help them. Because in a population-based vaccination program, we know that they may get it through this age group criteria, and because of the odd timing and others, they are on road, they may not attend the vaccination center. But if we can do a special drive and exclusive provision and awareness and bringing them as a call to action to kind of vaccination center, maybe through a private sector system, those kind of mechanism we can see. And all the corporates we can write also as an appeal to vaccinate their associated trucking, kind of communities, kind of that could be, and many of them probably already doing, kind of. So that, some of those ideas probably we can address. And to what we probably I'm hearing that a short-term and long-term plan, maybe some medium-term, kind of, we need to have a response plan and strategy for this group. Yes, even the active involvement of NGOs are not today. That's many of you mentioned that, because this is not really prioritized, because we have never positioned this community at the center of development. Even if there are cross-cutting community development programs where these groups and the driver and their community or family members are engaged, but I have not seen many exclusive programs designed, except some awareness, kind of programs like HIV and others, but exclusive programs where we are really, kind of making a more well-being and health and well-being of the family and the truck drivers as a whole, kind of. I think those kind of programs are more essential, critical. We don't have all the answers, but maybe a awareness about the issue and creating a more kind of a focus, kind of attention to the issue could be the way forward, kind of, as a next step for what kind of we are as a part of the ASTA kind of platform. We will summarize the recommendations of this today's discussion and deliberations, and share with you. And also as a next step, probably we need to see a series on this, kind of. It's just a starting point. Probably a video documentary also we are thinking about, and bringing more evidence through research and programs, because even the funding for even in the development sector, we see, unless you prioritize a issue, bring that to the center of discussion, with the funding priority will not happen actually. So whether it's a corporate or the foundations or the aid kind of organizations, because we need to bring those critical players together and bring the evidence and the actions together, so that this can be prioritized. So certainly we need to, it's a kind of off-track issue for many of the development partners, but we can bring that if collectively we can work together on this. So bringing more knowledge product, evidence, and creating that advocacy processes with the key influencers, either at the program or policy level, need to be done. And we love to kind of hear from you on this webinar and the next steps, and if there are ideas that you share with us, then we'll take it. Again, I will show solidarity at this point of time, the difficult time. We all are kind of contributing whatever way we can do that. Kind of please continue that at this crisis. And thank you all, and be safe.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Hello.